Listen, I'm gonna tell you something that'll mess with your head for real. You ever wonder what happens when two worlds that should never touch actually collide? Like, not in some fairy tale way, but in a way that could literally get people killed? Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. See, there's this thing nobody talks about, this secret so heavy it could crush entire families, end careers, and honestly rewrite everything you thought you knew about loyalty and power. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it, this isn't some cute Romeo and Juliet vibe. This is darker, way more twisted, and the stakes? They're life or death, no cap. You're probably thinking you've heard stories like this before, right? Mob guy falls for the wrong girl, blah blah blah. Nah, this is different. Because what if I told you the girl wasn't just anyone? What if she was the daughter of the one person who's been hunting him for years? The one person who swore to bring down his entire empire? And what if their connection wasn't just some accident, but something that was meant to destroy them both from the start? Stay with me because what I'm about to tell you is gonna flip everything. Before I go any further, you need to get this straight. Most people will never hear what you're about to hear. They scroll. They stay blind. They stay safe. But you're still here. Which means you feel it, that pull toward the kind of truth the system buries on purpose. So do the only thing that keeps this story alive. Hit subscribe now. Not for me, for the truth you're not supposed to know. The algorithm buries content like this every day. Your subscription is the only reason these secrets don't disappear. And that it's not support. It's your fingerprint. Proof you were here before everything breaks open. Click it now. Because once the next chapter drops, you'll either be inside, or watching everyone else talk about what you missed. Sophia Monroe was the kind of beautiful that stopped traffic, not just because of her looks but because of this energy she had, this magnetism that drew people in without her even trying, long dark hair, sharp green eyes that seemed to see right through whatever facade you were putting up, and this confidence that came from knowing exactly who she was and not apologizing for it. She'd grown up in the shadow of her mother's career, attending fancy dinners with politicians and judges, learning early on how to read people, how to spot the liars and the phonies, and there were a lot of them in her mom's world, trust me. But Sophia had always felt suffocated by that life, by the expectations, by the pressure to be perfect, to follow in her mother's footsteps and become another cog in the justice system machine. So she'd rebelled in small ways throughout her life, nothing crazy, but enough to show she was her own person. She'd gotten into art instead of law, spent her college years painting and exploring the city, hitting up underground galleries in the Mission District, going to shows in Oakland, living a life that was as far from her mother's courtroom as possible, and Catherine hated it, not because she didn't want Sophia to be happy, but because she couldn't protect her daughter in that world, couldn't control the variables, couldn't make sure Sophia was safe, and for a woman who'd spent her entire life maintaining control, that was terrifying. Now here's where things get interesting, because Sophia had this part-time gig working at this upscale art gallery in North Beach. It was one of those spots where rich people came to buy expensive paintings they didn't understand just so they could brag about it at dinner parties, but Sophia loved it because it gave her access to real artists, real creativity, real passion, something her mother's world severely lacked. And one night, late October, the gallery was hosting this exclusive event. Some big shot collector was unveiling his new acquisitions, and the place was packed with San Francisco's elite tech moguls, old money families, politicians, all of them sipping champagne and pretending to appreciate art they couldn't name if their lives depended on it. Sophia was working the floor, making small talk, directing people to different pieces, doing her job when she felt it, that prickle on the back of your neck when someone's watching you. And when she turned around, there he was, Marcus Salvatore, standing across the room in a tailored black suit that probably cost more than most people's cars, and he was staring right at her, not in that creepy way some dudes do, but with this intensity that made her breath catch, like he was seeing something in her that nobody else had ever noticed. She should have looked away, should have ignored him and gone back to work, but she didn't. Instead, she held his gaze, and something passed between them in that moment, something dangerous and electric and absolutely undeniable. It was like the entire room disappeared and it was just the two of them, and Sophia felt her heart racing in a way that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with recognition. Like on some level she knew this man was going to change her life, she just didn't know how yet. Marcus moved through the crowd like a shark through water, smooth and purposeful, people unconsciously stepping aside to let him pass even though they probably didn't know who he was. That's the thing about real power, you don't have to announce it, people just feel it. And when he reached Sophia, he didn't do some cheesy pickup line or try to impress her with money or status. He just looked at the painting she was standing next to, this abstract piece full of dark reds and blacks and sharp angles, and he said, "This is pain trying to be beautiful." And Sophia was shook because that's exactly what it was. The artist had created it during a brutal divorce, pouring all that anguish onto the canvas, and somehow this stranger had seen it in 5 seconds while everyone else just saw pretty colors. You know Art? Sophia asked, trying to keep her voice steady, trying to ignore the fact that this man was affecting her in ways she couldn't explain, and Marcus smiled, not a big smile, just this slight curve of his lips that suggested he knew way more than he was letting on. I know pain, he said, and I know what people do to survive it, which was probably the realest thing anyone had said to her in months, maybe years, and just like that, Sophia was hooked. She wanted to know more, wanted to understand. What kind of person could look at Art and see the truth behind it? Could stand in a room full of San Francisco's elite and make everyone else seem insignificant just by existing? They talked for hours that night about art, about life, about the masks people wear and the versions of themselves they show the world versus who they really are. And Marcus was different than anyone Sophia had ever met. He didn't try to impress her or win her over, he just was authentic in a way that was rare and precious, and Sophia found herself opening up about things she never talked about, her complicated relationship with her mother, the pressure she felt to be someone she wasn't, the loneliness that came with being the daughter of one of the most powerful women in California's legal system. And Marcus listened, really listened, not just waiting for his turn to talk but actually hearing her, seeing her for who she was and not just what she represented. What Sophia didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that Marcus hadn't stumbled into that gallery by accident. He'd known exactly who she was the moment he saw her, had recognized Catherine Monroe's daughter from the surveillance photos his people had compiled. See, Marcus had been planning something big, something that would finally get the feds off his back permanently, and part of that plan involved understanding his enemies, knowing their weaknesses, their pressure points, and Catherine's biggest weakness was standing right in front of him, beautiful and naive and completely unaware that she was talking to the one man her mother had sworn to destroy. But here's the thing, and this is where it gets complicated. Marcus had gone to that gallery with cold calculation, with the intention of using Sophia if necessary, of exploiting her connection to the judge if it served his purposes. That's the kind of man he was, ruthless and strategic and willing to do whatever it took to survive. But something happened that night, something he hadn't planned for. He actually liked her, not in some superficial way, but genuinely enjoyed talking to her, found himself fascinated by her perspective, by her honesty, by the way she saw the world with all its contradictions and still managed to find beauty in it. And that was dangerous, way more dangerous than any Fed investigation, because Marcus Salvatore didn't do feelings, didn't allow himself to care about anyone because caring meant vulnerability and vulnerability meant death in his world. They exchanged numbers that night. Sophia gave hers freely, excited by the connection they'd made, eager to see where it might go, while Marcus took it knowing he was crossing a line he'd never crossed before, blurring the distinction between business and personal in a way that could destroy everything he'd built. And over the next few weeks, they started seeing each other, nothing official, just coffee here, a walk through Golden Gate Park there, conversations that stretched into the early morning hours, and with each meeting the connection deepened. Sophia was falling for him hard, falling for the man who seemed to understand her in ways nobody else did, who didn't judge her for being different from her mother, who encouraged her art and her dreams and made her feel seen for the first time in her life. And Marcus, against every instinct he had, was falling too, falling in ways that terrified him, because caring about Sophia meant she could be used against him, meant she was a target, meant he'd brought an innocent person into his dark and violent world, and there was no good way for this to end, no scenario where they both walked away unscathed. Sophia still had no idea who Marcus really was. He told her he was in import-export, which was technically true if you counted drugs and weapons and every other illegal commodity that moved through the port of Oakland, and she'd never pushed for details because she was too caught up in how he made her feel, too distracted by the intensity of their connection to ask the hard questions, and maybe on some level she didn't want to know, didn't want reality to intrude on whatever this was, this bubble they'd created where two people from completely different worlds could just exist together without all the complications of their actual lives. But reality has a way of crashing in whether you're ready or not, and for Sophia and Marcus, that crash was coming fast because Catherine Monroe had gotten a tip. One of her sources had seen Sophia with a man at a cafe in Hayes Valley, and something about the guy had seemed off, the way he carried himself, the way people seemed nervous around him even when he wasn't doing anything. So Catherine had asked for a name, and when she got it, when she heard Marcus Salvatore, her blood went cold, because there were a lot of dangerous men in San Francisco, a lot of criminals she'd love to put behind bars, but Marcus Salvatore was at the top of that list. He was the one that got away, the one she'd been building a case against for 3 years, and now he was with her daughter, her baby girl, and Catherine's mind immediately went to the worst possible explanation, that this wasn't a coincidence, that Marcus had targeted Sophia deliberately, was using her to get to the judge, and the rage Catherine felt in that moment was primal and absolute. This man had crossed the ultimate line, and she was going to make him pay for it, whatever it took. Catherine didn't confront Sophia immediately. No, she was way too strategic for that. Years of legal training had taught her to gather evidence first, to build an ironclad case before making any moves, so she did what she does best. She investigated, had her people dig into every interaction between Marcus and Sophia, every text message, every phone call, every public appearance, trying to find proof of what she already believed in her gut, that Marcus was manipulating her daughter as part of some elaborate scheme. And the more she looked, the more paranoid she became, because the thing was, she couldn't find any obvious red flags, no evidence of coercion or manipulation, no pattern that suggested Marcus was using Sophia for information or access. They just looked like two people who genuinely cared about each other, and that somehow made it worse, because Catherine couldn't understand how her daughter could fall for someone like him, couldn't comprehend how Sophia didn't see the monster she was dealing with. And maybe that was the real problem. Maybe Catherine was so focused on who Marcus was in her world that she couldn't see who he might be in Sophia's world, couldn't imagine that he might be capable of genuine feelings, of actual love, because admitting that would mean admitting he was human, and Catherine had spent too many years seeing him as nothing but a criminal, a target, an enemy to be destroyed. Meanwhile, Marcus was dealing with his own crisis because his crew had found out about Sophia, and they were not happy about it. Tony Marchetti, his second-in-command and oldest friend, had pulled him aside one night at the warehouse and straight up told him he was being reckless, that getting involved with a federal judge's daughter was suicidal, that it put everyone at risk, not just Marcus but the entire organization. And Marcus knew Tony was right. Logically, he understood that this relationship was a liability, a weakness that could be exploited, but he also couldn't bring himself to end it, couldn't walk away from the one person who made him feel like he was more than just the Reaper, more than just a criminal, more than just the sum of all his violent deeds. Sophia saw him as a person, flawed and complicated but worthy of love, and that was addictive. That kind of acceptance, that kind of unconditional regard, he'd never had that before, and now that he did, the thought of losing it was unbearable. So he made a decision that went against every survival instinct he'd developed over 20 years in the game. He decided to tell Sophia the truth, to lay everything out and let her decide if she could handle it, if she could love him knowing who he really was and what he'd done. That conversation happened on a foggy November night at Baker Beach. They were sitting on the sand watching the Golden Gate Bridge disappear into the mist, and Marcus just said it, no preamble, no softening the blow. "Sophia, there's something you need to know about me. I'm not who you think I am, the import-export thing. That's not the whole story, not even close." And Sophia turned to look at him, and he could see in her eyes that part of her had always known something was off, had always sensed there was more to his story than he was telling. "So tell me the whole story," she said, her voice steady even though her hands were shaking. And Marcus did. He told her everything about his organization, about the violence, about the people he'd hurt and the lines he'd crossed, about her mother's investigation and how he'd initially gone to that gallery knowing exactly who Sophia was. And with each revelation, he watched her face, watched her process the reality of who he was, and he prepared himself for her to run, to hate him, to never want to see him again, because that's what any reasonable person would do, that's what he deserved. But Sophia didn't run. She sat there in silence for what felt like forever, just staring out at the ocean, processing. And when she finally spoke, what she said surprised him. "Did you ever actually care about me, or was I always just part of some plan?" And Marcus realized that was the real question, the only one that mattered. "At first," he admitted, "at first you were a strategic opportunity, a way to potentially gain leverage if I needed it. But Sophia, I swear that changed so fast. Being with you, getting to know you, that became the only real thing in my life. Everything else is just survival, but you're the only thing that makes me want to be better, to be someone who deserves you." And maybe it was manipulative, maybe he was still playing her, but the thing was, he meant every word. That was the terrifying truth. He'd fallen for the daughter of his enemy, and there was no strategic value in that, no angle, just pure messy human emotion that could destroy them both. Sophia asked him to take her home, said she needed time to think, and Marcus respected that, drove her back to her apartment in the Marina District without trying to convince her or defend himself further, just accepted that he'd put his fate in her hands and now he had to wait, and that waiting was torture, because for the first time in his adult life, Marcus Salvatore cared about something more than his own survival, cared about someone else's opinion of him, and the uncertainty was killing him slowly. But he'd made his choice. He'd rather have Sophia know the truth and reject him than live a lie with her, because what they had deserved honesty, even if that honesty destroyed everything. 3 days passed with no word from Sophia, 3 days where Marcus barely slept, barely ate, just went through the motions of running his empire while his mind was completely occupied with thoughts of her, wondering what she was thinking, if she told her mother, if federal agents were going to kick down his door any minute, and his crew was getting nervous, Tony kept suggesting they should leave town, disappear before whatever fallout was coming arrived, but Marcus refused. He'd made his bed. And now he'd lie in it. Whatever consequences came, he'd face them, because running would mean losing any chance with Sophia forever, and he wasn't ready to accept that yet. On the fourth day, Sophia showed up at his penthouse downtown, just appeared at his door at 10 p.m. looking exhausted and conflicted and beautiful, and before Marcus could say anything she walked in and said, "I should hate you, I should report you to my mother and never see you again, that would be the smart thing, the right thing." And Marcus's heart sank because he knew but wasn't coming. This was it, this was goodbye. Except then Sophia continued, "But I can't, I've tried, I've spent 3 days trying to convince myself that what we have isn't real, that you manipulated me, that I was just a mark. But Marcus, I know what we have, I feel it, and I can't just turn that off because of who you are or what you've done. I'm not saying I'm okay with your life, with the violence and the crime, I'm not, but I also can't pretend you're not the first person who's ever really seen me, who's ever made me feel like I matter for who I am and not who my mother is." And Marcus felt something break open in his chest, some wall he'd built years ago crumbling, because Sophia wasn't running, she was staying, she was choosing him despite knowing exactly who he was, and that was more than he deserved, more than he'd ever hoped for. Here's where the story takes its darkest turn, because what neither of them knew, what they couldn't have known, was that Catherine Monroe had been listening to every word. See, after getting the tip about Marcus and Sophia, Catherine had done something that went way beyond her legal authority. She'd had surveillance equipment planted in Marcus's penthouse, had been monitoring his communications and his movements, building a case that would finally put him away for good, and she'd heard everything: Marcus's confession, Sophia's response, all of it, and the judge sat in her home office listening to the recording over and over, trying to process what she was hearing, because the worst part wasn't that Sophia knew who Marcus was, the worst part was that Sophia didn't care, had chosen him anyway, and Catherine realized with horror that her daughter was in way deeper than she'd thought. This wasn't some manipulation. This was real. Sophia had actually fallen in love with a monster, and Catherine knew in that moment that she had to make an impossible choice. As a judge, as an officer of the court, she had evidence of criminal activity, she had recordings that could put Marcus Salvatore away for life. It was her duty to use them, to bring him to justice. But as a mother, using those recordings meant betraying Sophia's trust, meant destroying her daughter's happiness, meant creating a rift between them that might never heal, and Catherine Monroe, who'd always been so certain about right and wrong, suddenly found herself in the gray area she'd spent her entire career avoiding. You've already chosen a side. Stay until the end, because what Catherine does next changes everything you thought you knew about justice. Catherine made her decision on a cold December morning, sitting in her chambers with the weight of the world on her shoulders. She'd spent the entire night wrestling with her conscience, pacing her office, staring at those recordings, and by dawn she knew what she had to do. She called Sophia, asked her to come to the courthouse, said it was urgent, and when Sophia arrived, looking nervous because she knew her mother well enough to sense when something big was coming, Catherine closed the door, turned off her phone, and said the words that would change everything. "I know about Marcus, I know who he is, what he is, and I know you know too." And Sophia's face went pale, not with fear but with the realization that her two worlds had just collided in the worst possible way. "Mom," she started, but Catherine held up her hand. "Let me finish, please. I have recordings, evidence that could put him away for 20 years minimum, and as a federal judge, it's my duty to use that evidence. But Sophia, you're my daughter, my only child, and I will not be the reason you lose someone you love, even if that person is Marcus Salvatore." And Sophia couldn't believe what she was hearing, couldn't process that her mother, the woman who'd built a career on unwavering commitment to justice, was essentially saying she'd choose family over duty. But Catherine wasn't done. "However," she continued, her voice taking on that steel edge Sophia knew so well, "I can't just ignore what I know. I can't let him continue running his organization, hurting people, destroying lives. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell Marcus that he has 1 month to dismantle his entire operation, to get out of the game completely, legitimately, no strings attached. He liquidates everything, cuts all ties with organized crime, and disappears from the criminal world. If he does that, if he actually walks away, then I'll bury the recordings, I'll bury the evidence, and I'll give him a chance to build a legitimate life with you if that's what you both want. But if he doesn't, if he tries to play me or continues his operations, then I come down on him with the full force of the law. And Sophia, if that happens, you need to understand, I will destroy him. I will use every resource at my disposal to make sure he never sees daylight again. And there won't be anything you can do to stop it." And with that ultimatum, Catherine Monroe had just done something unprecedented. She'd given a criminal a way out, motivated not by corruption or weakness, but by love for her daughter, and it was the most complicated, most morally gray decision she'd ever made in her entire career. Sophia drove straight to Marcus's place, her mind racing, trying to figure out how to explain this, how to make him understand that her mother was offering him something no one in his position ever got, a genuine second chance. And when she told him, laid out Catherine's ultimatum in detail, Marcus's first reaction was anger. He felt trapped, manipulated, backed into a corner by a federal judge who thought she could just dictate his life. "She's asking me to give up everything," he said, pacing his living room like a caged animal. "My organization, my power, my entire identity. Do you understand what that means? I've spent 20 years building this. I can't just walk away." And Sophia understood, she really did, but she also saw what Marcus couldn't see in that moment, that Catherine was offering him freedom, not just from prosecution but from the life that was slowly destroying him, from the constant violence and paranoia and isolation. "Marcus," Sophia said, grabbing his hands, forcing him to look at her, "what if this is your chance? What if you could actually have a real life, a normal life, with me, without looking over your shoulder every day, without wondering which of your crew is going to betray you next, without having to make decisions about who lives and who dies? My mother is giving you an out, and yeah, it's on her terms, but Marcus, when are you ever going to get another opportunity like this?" The thing was, Marcus had been thinking about this exact scenario for months. Ever since meeting Sophia, he'd been questioning his life, wondering if there was more to existence than power and money and respect earned through fear. He built an empire, but he was lonely as hell, surrounded by people who only cared about what he could do for them. And Sophia was right. Catherine's ultimatum wasn't just a threat. It was an opportunity, a chance to escape before the life killed him or sent him to prison for the rest of his days. And as much as his pride bristled at being given orders by a federal judge, his heart knew this was the only way forward if he wanted any kind of future with Sophia, any kind of life worth living. So he made another decision that went against everything he'd been taught, everything he believed about himself. He decided to take the deal, to walk away from the Reaper and try to become just Marcus, just a man who wanted to build something real with the woman he loved. But walking away from organized crime isn't like quitting a corporate job. You can't just submit your resignation and move on. Marcus had enemies, lots of them, people who'd been waiting for a sign of weakness, and retirement would be seen as exactly that. He also had loyal soldiers who depended on his organization for their livelihoods, families that would be affected if he just shut everything down. So he had to be strategic, had to dismantle things carefully, gradually, in a way that wouldn't create a power vacuum that would lead to a war. And he had 1 month to do it, 30 days to untangle 2 decades of criminal enterprise. It seemed impossible, but Marcus was nothing if not resourceful. So he started making calls, arranging meetings, liquidating assets, paying out settlements, setting up his key people with legitimate businesses or safe retirements in other cities. And with each step, he felt lighter, like he was shedding a skin that had been suffocating him for years. Sophia watched this transformation with a mixture of hope and fear, hope that Marcus could actually pull this off, that they could have a real future together, but fear that something would go wrong, that someone from his past would come for him, or that her mother would change her mind, or that Marcus himself would realize he couldn't give up the power and control that had defined him for so long. Every day was tense. Every phone call could be the one that changed everything, and Sophia found herself praying, actually praying for the first time since she was a kid, that they'd make it through this, that love could actually be enough to overcome the impossible circumstances they'd found themselves in. Catherine, meanwhile, was dealing with her own internal struggle. She told no one about the deal she'd made, not her colleagues, not the FBI agents working the case against Marcus, nobody, because she knew what it looked like, knew it could be seen as corruption, as a judge compromising her principles for personal reasons, and she wasn't wrong, it was exactly that. But she decided that sometimes, in the rare moments when the law and justice diverge, you have to choose which one matters more. And for her, in this specific situation, protecting her daughter mattered more than putting one more criminal behind bars, even if that criminal was Marcus Salvatore. 3 weeks into Marcus's dismantling of his empire, something happened that nobody had anticipated. Tony Marchetti, Marcus's second-in-command and oldest friend, the guy who'd been with him since the beginning, who'd helped build everything they had, came to him with a proposition. "Boss," Tony said, and Marcus almost laughed at the title because he wouldn't be anyone's boss much longer. "I know what you're doing. I know why you're doing it and I respect it, but you need to understand there are people in the organization who don't, who see this as betrayal, who think you're weak and they're planning something." Marcus's blood went cold because he knew exactly what planning something meant in their world. It meant a hit, meant someone had decided he was a liability that needed to be eliminated. "Who?" Marcus asked, and Tony rattled off 3 names, mid-level guys who'd been getting ambitious lately, who probably saw Marcus's retirement as their chance to take over. "I can handle it," Tony offered, meaning he could handle it permanently the old way, but Marcus shook his head. No more of that, Tony, I'm done with that life, we do this differently, I'll meet with them, try to reason with them, offer them something to keep the peace. And Tony looked at his old friend with something like pity. Because they both knew that reason didn't work with men like that violence was the only language they understood, but Tony nodded anyway, said he'd set up the meeting, and hoped like hell that Marcus knew what he was doing. The meeting was set for a warehouse in Hunter's Point, neutral territory, just Marcus and the three guys, and Tony insisted on being there as backup, positioned outside with a clear line of sight, just in case things went sideways. Sophia had begged Marcus not to go, had a bad feeling about the whole thing, but Marcus assured her it would be fine, that he'd spent 20 years navigating situations like this and he knew how to handle himself. Besides, he only had 1 week left until Catherine's deadline, 1 more week and he'd be completely out, completely clean, and he wasn't going to let 3 ambitious soldiers derail everything he'd worked for. So on a rainy Thursday night, Marcus drove to that warehouse, walked in alone, and faced the 3 men who wanted him dead. The conversation started civil enough. Marcus laid out his position, explained that he was leaving the game, that he'd set things up so they'd all be taken care of, that there was no need for conflict. But the youngest of the 3, a guy named Danny Reeves who'd always had more ambition than sense, just laughed. You think we're stupid? You think we don't know what this is? You're not retiring, you're running, and we're not going to let you destroy everything we've built just because you fell for some girl. And Marcus felt his temper flare, felt that old instinct to respond with violence, to remind these punks exactly who they were dealing with, but he forced himself to stay calm, to remember what Sophia had told him, that he was better than this now, that he didn't need to be the Reaper anymore. I'm offering you a way forward, Marcus said, his voice low and controlled. You can take it or you can try to stop me, but I promise you the second option doesn't end well for anyone. And for a moment there was silence, tension so thick you could cut it with a knife, and Marcus thought maybe, just maybe, they'd see reason. But then Danny pulled a gun and everything happened fast. Marcus moved on instinct, 20 years of survival reflexes kicking in. He dove behind a shipping container as shots rang out, heard Tony's rifle crack from outside, saw one of the 3 guys go down, and suddenly it was chaos, exactly the kind of violence Marcus had been trying to escape, and he realized with crushing certainty that you can't just walk away from this life. It follows you, hunts you, demands blood one way or another. And as he returned fire, taking out Danny with a shot that was pure muscle memory, he wondered if Catherine had been naive to think he could ever be anything other than what he was, if Sophia had been delusional to believe love could save a man like him, because here he was, 1 week from freedom, and he was right back in the darkness, right back to being the Reaper, and maybe that's all he'd ever be. When the shooting stopped, 2 of the 3 were dead, the 3rd was wounded and running, and Marcus just stood there in that warehouse, gun in hand, breathing hard, and he called Sophia, told her what happened, and she could hear it in his voice, that despair, that sense that he'd failed, that the violence had found him again just like it always did. But Sophia, God bless her, Sophia just said, "Come home, Marcus, come home and we'll figure this out." And he did, drove straight to her apartment. Walked in covered in blood and regret, and she didn't flinch, didn't judge, just held him while he broke down, while he let himself feel the weight of everything he'd done, everyone he'd hurt, all the lives he'd destroyed including almost his own. And in that moment, Marcus Salvatore finally understood what Sophia had been trying to tell him all along, that redemption isn't about escaping your past, it's about facing it, owning it, and choosing to be better despite it. The next morning, Marcus did something he'd never done before. He went to Catherine Monroe's house, walked up to her door, and when she answered, clearly shocked to see him there, he said, "I need to turn myself in, I need to confess to everything, the warehouse, all of it, but I need to do it the right way, with your daughter not being implicated in any of this. She didn't know what I was going to do, she tried to stop me. She's innocent in all of this and I need your word that she stays that way." And Catherine looked at this man, this criminal who'd caused her so much frustration over the years, who'd fallen in love with her daughter, who'd tried and failed to escape his past, and she saw something she'd never expected to see, genuine remorse, real accountability, a willingness to face consequences rather than run from them, and she made another decision that defied everything she thought she knew about justice. "The warehouse was self-defense," Catherine said carefully. "Tony's statement confirms it. You were ambushed, you defended yourself. As far as I'm concerned, that's not a crime, and Marcus, you still have 4 days left on our agreement. You're not done yet, finish what you started, get out of the game completely, and then we'll talk about what comes next." Sophia had been listening from inside the house, and when Marcus left, she hugged her mother for the first time in months, really hugged her, and whispered, "Thank you," and Catherine just nodded, because what else could she do? She'd already crossed every line that mattered, might as well see it through to the end, and maybe, just maybe, this impossible situation would actually work out. Stranger things had happened, though not many. Marcus spent the next 4 days finishing what he'd started, wrapping up the last loose ends, ensuring everyone who'd worked for him had a way forward, and on the final day he met with Catherine officially, signed documents that transferred his legitimate assets into a trust, provided information that helped the feds shut down 3 rival organizations, essentially burning every bridge he had in the criminal world, and when it was done, when he'd officially become just a regular citizen with no power, no organization, no identity beyond his own name, he felt something he hadn't felt in 2 decades. He felt free. But here's the thing about freedom, it's terrifying when you're not used to it. Marcus had to figure out who he was without the empire, without the fear and respect, without the constant need to be 3 steps ahead of everyone, and it was harder than he'd imagined. There were days when he missed it, missed the power and the control, missed being the reaper, and there were nights when he woke up in a cold sweat, convinced someone was coming for him, convinced the past was going to catch up and destroy everything. But Sophia was there, patient and steady, helping him build a new identity, a new life, and slowly, day by day, Marcus started to believe that maybe he could be more than his worst deeds, maybe redemption was actually possible, not because he deserved it but because she believed he did, and sometimes that's enough. Someone else's faith in you can carry you until you develop your own. 6 months later, Marcus and Sophia were living in a small house in Sausalito. Marcus had started a legitimate consulting business. Nothing fancy, just helping small businesses with logistics and security, using all those skills he'd developed in his previous life but for legal purposes now. And Sophia had her own art studio, was finally pursuing her passion full-time, and they were happy, genuinely happy in a way that felt almost surreal after everything they'd been through. Catherine visited. Sometimes awkward at first but gradually warming to the reality of her daughter's choice, and while she and Marcus would never be close, they developed a mutual respect, an understanding that they'd both sacrificed parts of themselves for Sophia's happiness, and that created a bond of sorts, strange and complicated but real. But the past never really dies, it just waits, and on an ordinary Tuesday morning Marcus got a call from a number he didn't recognize, and when he answered, a voice he hadn't heard in months said, "Hello Marcus, we need to talk about the Marchetti situation," and his blood ran cold because Tony Marchetti had disappeared 3 months ago, just vanished without a trace, and Marcus had assumed he'd gone into hiding, started a new life somewhere far away, but the voice on the phone suggested something different, something darker, and suddenly Marcus realized that his past wasn't done with him yet, not by a long shot. This is just the beginning of what they're hiding. If you think this story is over, you're not paying attention. There are secrets within secrets, layers you haven't even touched yet. The Marchetti situation? That's a whole different level of darkness. The other videos on this channel, they're pieces of a puzzle you didn't know you were solving. Each story connects, each truth builds on the last, and if you walk away now you'll never see the full picture. This isn't about entertainment anymore, it's about understanding how deep this really goes, how many lives are still tangled in choices made years ago. Watch the next video. Not because I'm suggesting it, but because you won't be able to sleep without knowing what Tony Marchetti discovered before he disappeared, and why Marcus Salvatore's freedom might have been the most dangerous illusion of all. The forbidden secret between the Mafia boss and the judge's daughter? That was just the surface. Go. Now. The next piece is waiting, and time is not on your side.